Hey there. So today I wanted to talk about some things that happened at this year's San Diego Comic Convention. I wasn't able to attend the convention this year, but I followed a lot of the coverage over the weekend and was trying to stay updated on what was going on. There's a lot of stuff this year. It's kind of the biggest convention they've had since the pandemic, and seems like things are really kind of back in full swing for them over there. So I thought, there's a lot of news going on, a lot of stuff being covered by other channels and, the fan community and everything. So I thought I would take a look at like 5 stories that I felt like were pretty interesting or pretty relevant. So the first story I want to talk about comes out of the Eisner Awards this year. Late artist Ed Piskor won for his Hip Hop Family Tree omnibus. I think it's notable because it's more frequent in the fine art community than the comic art world, where artists sort of have a second life, if you will, to their work after they pass on, or maybe they aren't discovered until later. That doesn't happen a lot in the comic community. If an artist hasn't kind of made their name while they're alive, that's kind of it for them. And that's not to say that Ed Piskor wasn't well known before he passed. He was. And his cartoonist kayfabe channel that he had with Jim Rugg on YouTube, I was a big fan of that. I'm a big fan of his work. Their YouTube channel is part of the reason I make these videos. So it's nice to see that he's not being forgotten. And again, his family and friends have really sort of worked to sort of preserve his legacy. It's my understanding that he still has a couple comics too that haven't been released yet. So, I suppose it's always possible that he will, he could be nominated again in the future. So we'll see how that pans out. But it is nice to see that, regardless of anything that may have happened with his career, that, his peers still recognize him. So the second story I want to talk about was that there was a kitchen fire at a restaurant in San Diego. This was off-site. This was not at the convention center. But next door, apparently, they were doing a pop-up iceberg lounge for the Penguin TV show that's coming out. And when people heard there was a fire, they thought it was some sort of guerrilla marketing stunt. And I saw one report that said people were even checking to see if the fire trucks were real. So hopefully, thankfully no one was harmed in this incident. But, when there's an emergency, people need to get out. They said they had to evacuate about 1,200 people, and apparently there were 50 people staying above the restaurant. It looks like there's residential, like Airbnbs and stuff, and I haven't really thought about it before, but of course, if you live in San Diego, this week is probably pretty hectic if you're not into the comic convention, so yeah, people probably Airbnb out their places during this, and I guess the Red Cross had to relocate about 50 people, but, it just calls into question the whole viral guerrilla marketing thing. I know this really kind of came to a head with the Dark Knight movie years ago. I know that Brainstorm Comics in Chicago was vandalized. It's just, we don't see as much of this anymore, I feel like, especially since the pandemic. But it's something to take into account. Thankfully nothing happened here, as far as anyone being injured or harmed, but the fact that people had to stop and question it is kind of unfortunate. The next thing I wanted to touch on, it was DC's Absolute line. We got some information about this kind of right before the convention. DC had a video online talking about kind of what this line was going to be. I know there was a preview given out of the Absolute Batman book. But we've got some more details now, sort of what this line is going to entail. Originally, the rumors were this would be sort of Ultimate DC, sort of DC's answer to Marvel's Ultimate line. And I feel you can argue they've tried this a couple times now. I feel like the Earth One line of graphic novels was sort of that years ago. I think you can argue the New 52 was also sort of a line-wide attempt at that. And again, the Earth One graphic novels are pretty much over now, and the New 52 is sort of morphed into the current DC universe. So yeah, this is really not what I was expecting when I heard Ultimate DC. Now again, that was never said by DC Comics, of course, but they have said now that this will be its own universe. It'll be part of the multiverse, probably so they can have a crossover with the core titles at some point. And that's interesting, but I feel like by trying to make it something else, they're sort of straying from what this could be. I think was a lot of potential here, and now they're explaining it as like a universe where it's sort of being centered around the spirit of Superman. Like you could argue the main continuity is this is sort of centered around sort of Darkseid. So we have these darker heroes. I don't know if I need that. You know, the Absolute Batman has caused a lot of debate online. I'm not crazy about Superman in a black suit. You know, Wonder Woman it's an interesting look with this sort of skeleton Pegasus she's riding, and they're saying like witchcraft is involved a lot more with her character now. I'll try these out and see where they go, but I kind of had high hopes for this line, and now I'm not really sure how I feel about it. I don't feel like this is what I was expecting. I don't know how heroic these characters are, if their sort of core is being affected by Darkseid, you know, or at least in spirit. Again, we'll see how this goes. I'll definitely check these out, but yeah, this is a lot different from what I was expecting. So to sort of counter that, we got an announcement of a new Justice League book. So the Justice League is back in the DC universe. We haven't had a Justice League book for a couple years now, and they announced Justice League Unlimited, which will be written by Mark Waid and drawn by Dan Mora. I've been a big fan of their World's Finest book they've been doing with Superman and Batman. I wasn't crazy about their work on Shazam, so we'll see how this pans out. It looks like an interesting lineup. I feel like Waid probably chose all these characters for specific reasons. Again, he's so entrenched in sort of DC superhero continuity and story. I'm sure there's a reason that everybody's on this roster. My thing is, now that Mark Waid's back at DC, I feel like he's sort of been dancing around doing a Superman book. He's doing World's Finest, which is the Superman-Batman team-up book, and now he's doing Justice League, which features Superman. It's like, how long before he's just on a Superman title? I would really like to see him kind of just dig deep into a Superman book. He is a notorious Superman fan. He has read every Superman story. I think he's claimed that he's read every DC superhero comic book. So yeah, he definitely knows what he's doing. I know there was, years ago, there was sort of a stalled sort of creative team where him and 3 other writers were going to take over the then 4 Superman books. And I want to say that was supposed to be him, Grant Morrison, Mark Millar, and Tom Payer, I believe. And that sort of got shot down by editorial, but I know they had some big plans, and it's always sort of one of those what could have been comic book stories. So yeah, really looking forward to this Justice League book. Again, it's called Justice League Unlimited. I don't think it has anything to do with the cartoon of that name from about 20 years ago. But that was a great, show, so, they at least have to live up to that title, hopefully. Even though we do sort of get sort of a version of the cartoon logo in the background there. So I don't think it's affiliated with the cartoon in any way, but we'll see what they do. And of course, the biggest story coming out of San Diego is Robert Downey Jr.'s return to the MCU. Marvel announced at their big Hall H panel that RDJ would be coming back to play Dr. Doom. Not the obvious choice here. I think this kind of threw everybody for a loop. I think they're trying to course correct with their movies. It'll be interesting to see how this goes, how they play this. With a lot of their movies lately kind of concerning a multiverse and variants, different versions of characters, I think a lot of people are assuming that this is going to be a version of Tony Stark that becomes Dr. Doom. It's not my understanding that that's what's happening here. I believe this is just Robert Downey Jr. playing a different character. In the panel, they announced him as playing Victor Von Doom, not coming back as Tony Stark. I think a lot of people are kind of confused on what's going on here. And again, nobody really knows yet either. They may be waiting to kind of take the temperature of this announcement and see how to proceed. But, pretty much all my coworkers from my day job are assuming that this is Tony Stark as Doctor Doom. And, I mean, that's understandable considering what Marvel's been doing with their movies lately. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Does this sort of get them back on track? It looks like that the Fantastic Four movie takes place in another universe, and so it's possible that this Doctor Doom comes from that universe. So again, that's something else that could lead to people thinking that this is a variant or a different version of Iron Man here. So yeah, what do you think? What did you think when you heard this announcement? What are your theories? I know there's a lot of stories at San Diego this year. This is just sort of the 5 big ones I wanted to talk about. Is there something you think I should have brought up? Let me know in the comments. What do you think of RDJ coming back? And thanks for watching. If you'd like to follow me on social media, I'm on Twitter/X at Detective651. Also on Instagram at Detective651. Be sure to check out my t-shirt store at tpublic.com/user/detective651. I've got a lot of nerdy designs on there, and there's sales all the time, so check it out frequently.
Oh, Batman got us.